If you were an early N64 adopter, there was one conversation which got gamers talking, and that was the head-to-head of two of the console's earliest racers, Top Gear Rally and MRC Multi-Racing Championship. While neither game was perfect, they both sold fairly well, and so sequels for both were planned. However, they didn't seem to arrive that quickly. In fact, Top Gear Rally 2 didn't land in North America until late 1999, and the rest of the world in early 2000. So that leads me on to MRC 2. However, that game is actually called Rally Challenge 2000, and you've already been watching it. Developed by Genki, the same studio behind MRC, and published by South Peak Games, in the year 2000, Rally Challenge 2000 is the direct follow-up to MRC, and had been known as Rally Championship during its development. There was, however, a Japanese-only prequel to this, which was Rally 99, just to help add to the confusion. The game on paper does sound pretty good. There are 9 tracks to choose from, taking in exotic locations from across the globe, with 4 different weather effects for all courses, lots of game modes such as Arcade and Championship, and has even support for up to 4 players. The real gem though is that the game has officially licensed cars and brands in it, which does add to the overall aesthetics of the game, and if you're a rally fan you'll no doubt find your favourite car to hammer around or tweak things like the suspension and gear ratios. Adding a little more in terms of the game's simulation appeal is the fact that the cars do pick up damage. The downside is that this isn't visual damage, however when your red damage meter fills up, the cars handle differently, and with a huge amount of damage it makes the game near impossible to carry on playing. And speaking of the handling, the game reminds me a lot of Sega Rally, which isn't a bad thing. The cars in the game do handle differently, and so you can expect a lot of practicing with different cars to find the one which suits your playstyle best. Once you find just that car, then you'll be able to fly around the courses in no time. The problem I found, however, is that the tracks are extremely narrow. In comparison to V-Rally for example, the courses here give you very little space to slide around corners. I can understand this in some of these city or town sections where it wouldn't be realistic to have huge roads that look out of place. But in the forests and jungles I can't see why the game didn't give you a little bit more space of freedom to move around in. That isn't my biggest gripe with the game though. The graphics are a very strange mixed bag. Firstly, this is a generally blurry game, and by blurry I mean like foggy in London on a cold November night. At times you can barely see more than a few feet in front of your car, and if you add some weather effects this can be even worse. The developers also added a motion blur, which I've no doubt you'll have already noticed, and this does make the game a strain on your eyes to play. When combined with the game's very acceptable frame rate, this gives the player a very strange sensation whilst playing it. But there are positives to the visuals however. The reflections on the car are some of the best on the console, and when you look at the back window the reflections look the business, and the weather effects are also top rate. Thankfully the weather effects also affect how the game plays, and so they're not just for visual purposes. My biggest complaint against the game isn't its sound though. To be blunt, it's awful. The music is generic and repeats the same loops over and over. It gets tiresome very quickly, but not as much so as the commentator co-pilot does. The delivery of his lines sounds like someone in their 40s trying to sound like an 18-year-old from the 1980s. Add to this some terrible sound effects which actually make the cars feel less powerful, and it would be hard to imagine how they could have made this area of the game any worse. However, I do have a confession to make. No, not that kind of confession. Well, not in public anyway, but my confession is that I actually really enjoyed this game. In the same way how the Cruis'n series wasn't that great to look at or to play, there's just something so addictive about this game. After I recorded all of the footage I needed, I just couldn't stop myself from having more and more races. I wanted to unlock all of the courses and finish each of the modes in first place. The cars all feel so differently, and so I wanted to unlock them all, even just to thrash them around on the courses a few times. As imperfect and as unpolished as this game may be, if you like rally games with more of an arcade feel, then you too may just like this. If you can get over the poor look of the game, then you have a game which you can whittle away some afternoons on. Just don't expect to be playing this days or even weeks down the line. Now I never played this game as a kid as it didn't make it out over here in Europe, so I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below, especially if you did get this game back on its release. And as always, thanks for watching, and until next time.